The living room buzzed with laughter and conversation as Derek refilled wine glasses, moving between his wife's college friends with practiced ease. 5 years of hosting these monthly gatherings had taught him the rhythm: keep the drinks flowing, the snacks replenished, and stay pleasantly invisible in the background. "Oh God, where's Derek?" Amanda's voice cut through the chatter, that particular tone he'd learned to recognize. Sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. "Derek. We need more of those little cheese things." He emerged from the kitchen, carrying a fresh platter. "Already on it." "See." Amanda gestured at him dramatically, her third glass of Chardonnay sloshing slightly. "This is what I deal with. Mr. Predictable. Mr. Always one step behind." Her friend Nicole laughed politely, but Derek noticed the uncomfortable glance she exchanged with her husband. He set down the platter without comment. "I swear," Amanda continued, warming to her audience, "I regret marrying him every single day." The room went still. It wasn't the first time she'd made such a joke. There had been countless smaller digs over the years, comments about his career, his hobbies, his cooking, his clothes. But this was different. This was a declaration, delivered with wine courage and a room full of witnesses. Derek stood there, cheese platter still in hand, and felt something inside him simply stop. Not break. Breaking implied sudden damage. This was more like a machine powering down, all the gears that had been grinding themselves to dust finally ceasing their futile rotation. "Funny," he said quietly, setting the platter down with deliberate care. "I feel exactly the same way." Amanda's smile froze. "What?" "I regret it too." His voice was calm, almost conversational. "Every day. For probably the last 3 years, if I'm being honest." Someone's wine glass clinked against the coffee table too loudly in the sudden silence. "Derek," Amanda's tone shifted, trying for playful damage control. "Don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke." "Is it?" He sat down in the armchair across from her, ignoring the 6 pairs of eyes watching this private moment become public. "Because you've been making that same joke, in various forms, for a long time now. At some point, jokes repeated often enough stop being jokes. They become truths we're too afraid to say directly." Amanda's face flushed. "You're being ridiculous. I was just comparing me to your ex-boyfriend Thomas." "Yes, I've heard about Thomas. How he made partner at 32. How he remembered which flowers you liked. How he always knew the right thing to say." Derek's tone remained level, clinical almost. "You mention him roughly once a week." "That's not." "Or maybe you were joking like you did at your sister's wedding, when you told everyone I'd let myself go because I gained 15 pounds after my father died." He watched her eyes widen. "Or like last month, when you laughed with your mother about how I'm still working the same job while all your friends' husbands are climbing corporate ladders." Nicole and her husband were suddenly very interested in their phones. Another couple had discovered something fascinating about the ceiling. "You're embarrassing me," Amanda hissed. Derek almost laughed at that. "I'm embarrassing you? Amanda, you just told a room full of people you regret our marriage. But I'm embarrassing you." She stood up abruptly, wine sloshing onto her white blouse. "Everyone, I think we need to call it a night. Derek is clearly having some kind of episode." But no one moved. They'd all been to enough of these gatherings, heard enough of Amanda's jokes at Derek's expense. Some had laughed awkwardly. Some had stayed silent. All had witnessed the slow erosion disguised as humor. "I'm not having an episode," Derek said, still seated, still calm. "I'm actually seeing things clearly for the first time in a long time. You wanted honesty? Here it is. I'm tired, Amanda. I'm tired of being your punchline. I'm tired of watching you compare me to every other man in your life and finding me lacking. I'm tired of shrinking myself down so you can feel bigger." "Fine." Amanda's voice cracked. "If you're so miserable, then leave." Derek stood slowly, and in that moment, something in his posture changed. He looked taller somehow, despite being the same height he'd always been. "You know what? I think I will. Not tonight, I'm not dramatic like that. But soon. Very soon." He walked to the coat closet, pulled out his jacket, and headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned back one last time. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. Amanda, the dishes are in the sink. I trust you remember how the dishwasher works, though you've always joked about being too incompetent for housework." Turns out, that was another one of those jokes that stopped being funny. The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than any slam could have. In the living room, Amanda stood frozen, her wine-stained blouse darkening with a spreading crimson bloom that felt oddly symbolic. Her friends began gathering their things with mumbled excuses, avoiding her eyes. For the first time in 5 years of marriage, Amanda understood what true regret felt like. And Derek, walking through the cool evening air toward his car, felt lighter than he had in years. Derek spent that first night in a hotel room that smelled of industrial cleaning products and other people's travels. He lay awake on sheets too crisp, staring at the popcorn ceiling, waiting for the panic to hit. Waiting to feel guilty, to question his outburst, to mentally rehearse an apology. The panic never came. Instead, at 2 a.m., he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: peace. Quiet, undisturbed peace without waiting for the next criticism, the next comparison, the next joke that drew blood while everyone pretended it was just humor. His phone buzzed constantly. 43 messages from Amanda by sunrise, cycling through anger, confusion, dismissal, and finally, around 4 a.m., apologies that somehow still blamed him for overreacting. He turned off his phone. Monday morning, Derek went to work with a clarity that surprised him. He'd been sleepwalking through his job for years. Amanda was right about that, though not in the way she thought. He hadn't stagnated because he lacked ambition. He'd stopped trying because every achievement was met with "that's nice," but Thomas already did that when he was younger, or I guess some people peak early. His boss, Vincent, called him into the office around 10. "Everything okay? Amanda called here looking for you." Derek met his eyes steadily. "Everything's fine. Actually, I want to talk to you about the Morrison project. I know we shelved it last year, but I've been thinking." What followed was the most engaged Derek had been in a work conversation in 3 years. Vincent leaned back in his chair, surprised, then interested, then excited. By noon, Derek had been reassigned to lead a new initiative. By end of day, he'd assembled a team. He returned to the house Tuesday while Amanda was at work. The silence greeted him differently now, not as loneliness, but as absence of hostility. He packed methodically: clothes, documents, his father's watch that Amanda had once suggested he sell because it's not like you need a watch anymore, everyone has phones. He left his wedding ring on the kitchen counter next to a note: "Staying with a friend. We'll talk when we're both ready to be honest." What he didn't mention was that he'd already contacted an attorney. The consultation was scheduled for Thursday. The week unfolded in a strange new rhythm. Derek joined the gym he'd quit 3 years ago when Amanda complained about the membership cost while simultaneously booking weekend spa trips with her friends. He reconnected with his college roommate, Trevor, over beers, and realized how many friendships he'd let atrophy because Amanda found his friends boring or not ambitious enough. "Man, I barely recognized you when you called," Trevor said, studying him across the pub table. "Not because you look different. Because you sound different. When did you get so quiet?" Derek considered this. "Gradually. It's like, imagine someone criticizing every word you say. Eventually, you just say less. Then even less. Until you're basically a ghost in your own life." Trevor shook his head. "That's not marriage, brother. That's imprisonment." By Friday, Derek had moved into a short-term rental, a small one-bedroom with terrible water pressure but big windows that actually let in light. Amanda's increasingly frantic calls went to voicemail. Her texts evolved. "You're being childish. People are asking about you. My mother thinks you've had a breakdown. We need to talk about the mortgage. Fine. Ignore me. See if I care. Derek, please. Can we just talk?" He responded only once: "I'll be in touch through my attorney regarding next steps. Take care of yourself, Amanda." Her response came in seconds: "Attorney? You're insane. Over one joke." Derek stared at that message for a long time. One joke. As if the past 3 years could be reduced to a single moment of hurt feelings. As if he were the unreasonable one for finally stating a truth she'd been speaking out loud for months. He didn't reply. Saturday morning, Derek went for a run. 5 miles, the farthest he'd gone since before his father died. His lungs burned, his legs ached, but his mind felt crystalline. He'd forgotten what it felt like to challenge himself without someone waiting at home to make it about them. When he returned, sweating and alive, Nicole was sitting on his rental's front steps. "Your wife doesn't know I'm here," she said immediately. "But we need to talk." Derek wiped his face with his shirt. "Does she know where I live?" "No. Trevor told my husband, who told me. The men's network works both ways." She smiled without humor. "Can I come in?" Over coffee, Nicole spoke carefully. "I need to apologize. We all do, everyone who was there that night. We've watched her treat you like that for years. We laughed, or we stayed quiet, and both are the same thing really. We enabled it." Derek wrapped his hands around his mug. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Amanda called me yesterday, crying. She wants me to convince you to come home. She says you're being dramatic, that she didn't mean it, that you've changed and become cold." Nicole met his eyes. "But Derek, I watched you that night. You didn't become cold. You just stopped being warm for someone who kept standing in the rain." Poetic. True. She set down her coffee. "She's telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown. That the stress of your job got to you. She's rewriting the narrative." Derek felt a flash of anger, then let it pass. Of course she was. Amanda had always been skilled at reframing reality to suit her needs. "Let her," he said finally. "I know what happened. That's enough." Nicole studied him. "You've really checked out, haven't you? You're not fighting for the marriage. There's nothing to fight for. You can't fight for something that only existed in your imagination." After Nicole left, Derek sat in his quiet apartment and realized something profound. He didn't miss Amanda. He missed the idea of her, the woman he'd married, who'd been kind and funny and supportive. But that woman had disappeared years ago, replaced by someone who found strength in his weakness, humor in his hurt. He missed a ghost. And you can't build a life with a ghost. Amanda stood in the kitchen of their house, her house now, it seemed, staring at the empty space where Derek's coffee mug usually Saturday. 3 weeks. He'd been gone 3 weeks, and the silence was becoming unbearable. At first, she'd been angry. Righteous, justified anger at his dramatic exit, his refusal to answer her calls, his lawyer's cold email about proceeding with dissolution of marriage. Over a joke. Over one stupid joke that everyone made about their spouses. But the anger was harder to maintain when she was alone at 11 p.m., when the house creaked and settled, when there was no one to blame for the dishes still in the sink or the burned dinner or the loneliness that sat in her chest like a stone. Her mother hadn't helped. "You've always been too sharp-tongued, Amanda. I warned you." Her sister was more direct. "You treated him like dirt. What did you expect?" Even her friends were suddenly unavailable. Nicole had been sympathetic at first, then oddly distant. Jessica stopped responding to texts. The book club chat went silent whenever Amanda posted. At work, Amanda found herself distracted. She'd catch herself starting to compose a text to Derek about something mundane, a funny email, an annoying coworker, before remembering. The muscle memory of their relationship outlasted the relationship itself. She drove past his rental twice. Saw his car, saw lights on in the window, saw the outline of a life continuing without her. She'd expected him to crumble, to come crawling back. Instead, he seemed to be thriving. It infuriated her. It terrified her. Thursday afternoon, she finally broke down and called Trevor's wife, Melissa, who she'd always considered too simple, too domestic. But Melissa had known Derek longer. "I need to talk to someone who knows him," Amanda said, hating the pleading tone in her voice. "He won't speak to me. I don't understand what happened." Melissa was quiet for a long moment. "Do you really want to understand? Or do you want me to tell you he's wrong and you're right? That's not fair. Amanda, I've watched you treat Derek like an accessory for 3 years. A disappointing accessory you kept trying to return. You compared him to every other man you've ever known. You mocked his job, his hobbies, his weight, his grief. You did it in front of people. You did it constantly. And when he finally said enough, you acted like he was the crazy one. Amanda felt tears burning. It was just teasing. Couples do that. Teasing is affectionate. What you did was cruel. There's a difference. Melissa's voice softened slightly. I don't think you're a monster, Amanda. I think you got comfortable being mean. And Derek got comfortable accepting it. Until he didn't. After hanging up, Amanda sat in her car in the parking garage and cried. Really cried, not the angry, frustrated tears she'd shed before, but deep, gulping sobs that came from somewhere she'd been avoiding. When had it started? When had she stopped seeing Derek as her partner and started seeing him as, what? A project that failed? A choice she regretted? She thought back to their early days. Derek bringing her coffee every morning, exactly how she liked it. Derek listening to her work problems for hours, offering thoughtful solutions. Derek planning surprise weekend trips because he knew she needed breaks. When had she stopped appreciating that and started expecting it? When had she started mentioning Thomas? Thomas, who dumped her via text while on vacation with another woman. Thomas, who she'd sobbed over for 6 months. Thomas, who Derek had patiently helped her get over, never once making her feel foolish for grieving someone who'd treated her so poorly. And she'd repaid that kindness by using Thomas as a weapon. By holding up her ex, a genuinely terrible person, as some kind of gold standard. By making Derek feel like he'd never measure up to a man who couldn't even be bothered to break up with her in person. The realization hit her like cold water. She'd become Thomas. She'd become the person who made someone else feel small and worthless. She'd become the villain in someone else's story. Amanda went home and, for the first time in weeks, really looked at the house. Derek's absence was everywhere. The squeaky cabinet he'd been meaning to fix. The loose doorknob he'd mentioned 3 times. The garden that was already overgrown because he'd been the one who actually maintained it while she complained it wasn't as nice as the neighbors. She'd built an entire identity around being disappointed in Derek. Around being the one who settled, who could have done better, who stayed despite regrets. It had made her feel powerful, superior, justified in every criticism and complaint. But power built on someone else's diminishment isn't power. It's just cruelty with better PR. Her phone buzzed. Derek's attorney, requesting a meeting to discuss asset division. Asset division. Legal language for dismantling a life together. Amanda called the number before she could stop herself. A professional voice answered, Law Offices of Patricia Hernandez. This is Amanda Wright. I need to speak with my husband. Derek Wright. Is there any way? Mrs. Wright, Mr. Wright has requested all communication go through our office. Please. Amanda heard the desperation in her voice and didn't care. Please, can you tell him I need to talk to him? Just once. Just 5 minutes. A pause. I'll relay the message. But I can't promise anything. The attorney called back 2 hours later. Mr. Wright has agreed to meet you. Saturday, 2 p.m., at Riverside Park. He asks that you come alone and keep it brief. Saturday felt like both tomorrow and a year away. Derek arrived at Riverside Park 15 minutes early, choosing a bench with clear sight lines. Old habits from a marriage where ambush conversations had become Amanda's specialty. But this time was different. He'd agreed to this on his terms, in a public space, with a clear exit strategy. He'd changed in the past month. Not dramatically, he was still the same person, but there was a quiet confidence in how he carried himself now. He'd stopped apologizing for existing. Stopped bracing for criticism that never came in his new life. Stopped performing the role of the disappointing husband. Amanda appeared at exactly 2 p.m., and Derek noted with detachment how nervous she looked. Her hair was down, the way he used to love, and she wore the blue dress she knew he liked. Strategic choices. Everything with Amanda was strategic. She sat down beside him, maintaining careful distance. "Thank you for meeting me. You said it was important." "It is." She stopped, started again. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About what happened." Derek waited, watching a family feed ducks by the pond. A little girl laughed as a duck waddled toward her, completely trusting. He envied that trust. "I'm sorry," Amanda said. "For that night. For what I said. I was drinking and I didn't mean." "Amanda." He cut her off gently. "You did mean it. You've meant it every time you've said something similar. The alcohol just made you honest in front of witnesses." Her face flushed. "That's not fair. I was joking. We've had this conversation. I'm not rehashing whether jokes can be weapons. You know they can. You're smart enough to know exactly what you were doing." She looked down at her hands. "Then why did you come? If you've already decided I'm some kind of monster." "I don't think you're a monster." Derek turned to face her. "I think you're someone who got comfortable being cruel. There's a difference. Monsters don't have a choice. You did." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and Derek felt a distant echo of the instinct to comfort her. But he stayed where he was. Her tears weren't his responsibility anymore. "I don't want a divorce," she said quietly. "I know I've been awful. I know I need to change. But we've been together for 5 years. That has to mean something." "It does mean something. It means I spent 5 years, 3 of them, anyway, slowly losing myself. It means you spent 3 years expressing regret about marrying me in increasingly public ways. Those years mean something, Amanda. Just not what you want them to mean. People can change. I can change. We could go to counseling. You can change. I believe that. But I can't be the test subject for your personal growth experiment." Derek's voice stayed level, factual. "Do you know what the past month has taught me? I'd forgotten what it felt like not to be criticized daily. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have a thought without immediately wondering how you'd turn it into evidence of my inadequacy. I'd forgotten what it felt like to just exist. Without apology." Amanda wiped her eyes. "So that's it. One bad patch and you just give up." "Amanda, you told a room full of people you regretted marrying me. You've compared me to your ex-boyfriend regularly for 2 years. You've mocked my career, my appearance, my hobbies, my grief over my father's death. You've done this consistently, publicly, and when called on it, you've deflected by calling it jokes or saying I'm too sensitive." He paused. "That's not a bad patch. That's a pattern. That's who we became together." "Who I became, you mean? You're blaming me for everything." "No. I'm taking responsibility for enabling it. For accepting treatment I should have walked away from years ago. For shrinking myself down and calling it compromise. For staying in a marriage where I felt tolerated at best and resented at worst." Derek stood up. "You asked why I came. I came to tell you this in person. I don't hate you. I don't even blame you, not really. But I don't want to be married to you anymore. And that's not going to change." Amanda stood too, grabbing his arm. "Derek, please. I love you." He gently removed her hand. "You love the idea of me. The version who didn't talk back, who accepted everything, who made you feel superior by being inferior. But I'm not that person anymore. And honestly, Amanda, I don't think you ever loved me. I think you loved having someone to blame for your disappointments." "That's not true." "Then tell me, without mentioning Thomas, without comparing me to anyone else, without qualifiers or criticisms, tell me one thing you love about me. Right now. One thing." She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tried again. You've always been." The silence stretched. "That's what I thought," Derek said softly. "Goodbye, Amanda. My attorney will be in touch." He walked away, and this time, he didn't look back. Behind him, he heard her crying, heard her call his name once, twice. He kept walking. It hurt. Of course it hurt. Ending 5 years of intertwined lives hurt like pulling off a bandage that had fused with skin. But underneath the hurt was something else. Relief. The kind of relief that comes from finally stopping something that should have ended long ago. Derek drove to his rental, walked inside, and stood in the center of his small living room. No one here to criticize the furniture arrangement. No one to make jokes about his cooking. No one to compare him to ghosts of relationships past. Just silence. And possibility. And the understanding that sometimes loving yourself means leaving someone who doesn't. His phone buzzed. Trevor, Melissa said you met with her today. You okay? Derek typed back. Yeah. I think I really am. And for the first time in 3 years, he meant it. 6 months later, Derek sat in the coffee shop where he'd had his first date with Amanda 7 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on him, ending where they'd begun. But today wasn't about nostalgia. Today was about closure. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Remarkably civil in the end, once Amanda stopped fighting and started accepting. They'd split assets fairly, sold the house, and moved on. Or rather, Derek had moved on. Amanda's moving on was more complicated. He'd heard through mutual friends, the few who'd stayed neutral, that Amanda had started therapy. That she'd quit her job for something less stressful. That she'd stopped drinking at social gatherings. That she'd apologized, genuinely, to several people she'd hurt over the years. Good for her. Derek meant it. Her growth wasn't his responsibility, but he didn't wish her ill. He just wished her elsewhere. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Amanda. I know you blocked my old number. I'm not asking to meet or get back together. I just need to tell you something. Please read. Derek almost deleted it. But curiosity won. I've been in therapy for 4 months. Dr. Walsh says I have issues with control and self-worth that I projected onto you. She says I made you small to feel big. She's right. I knew she was right the second she said it. I'm not texting to apologize again. You've heard enough hollow apologies from me. I'm texting because my therapist asked me to answer a question, and I realized I'd never actually answered it for you. What did I love about you? I loved that you were kind. Not weak, kind. There's a difference I didn't understand. I loved that you could lose your father and still get up every day and function, even when I mocked you for gaining weight from grief eating. I loved that you tried to make me happy even when I was determined to be miserable. I loved that you never fought dirty, even when I did constantly. I loved all the things I systematically destroyed in you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I haven't forgiven myself. But you asked me once to tell you what I loved about you without comparisons or qualifiers. I couldn't then. I'm answering now, even though it's too late. You deserved that answer 5 years ago. You deserved it every day after. I hope you're happy. I mean that. You earned happiness in ways I never gave you credit for. Take care of yourself, Derek. You were always good at taking care of everyone else. Derek read it twice. Felt something loosen in his chest, not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. Amanda had finally seen him. Too late to matter, but perhaps not too late for her to become someone better for the next person. He didn't respond. Some conversations end without reply. The coffee shop door chimed. Natalie walked in, smiling when she spotted him. They'd met at the gym 2 months ago, started talking about documentaries and hiking trails, and slowly built something that felt nothing like what he'd had with Amanda. Natalie didn't joke at his expense. Didn't compare him to exes. Didn't need him to be less so she could be more. She was just herself. And she let him be himself. It was revolutionary in its simplicity. Sorry I'm late, she said, sliding into the booth. Client meeting ran over. You order yet? Waited for you. Wanted to make sure you got your complicated oat milk situation right. She laughed. It's not complicated. It's specific. There's a difference. There is, Derek agreed, and found himself smiling genuinely. There really is. Later that evening, Derek stood on the balcony of his new apartment, a real apartment now, not a rental. 2 bedrooms, city view, his name alone on the lease. He'd gotten promoted at work last month. Vincent had pulled him aside and said, "Whatever changed in you this year, keep it. You're finally showing us what you're actually capable of." His phone showed a text from his mother. "So proud of you, sweetheart. Your father would be too." Below, the city hummed with life. Somewhere out there, Amanda was working on herself. Somewhere, the friends who'd witnessed his breaking point were having their own conversations about respect and boundaries. Somewhere, couples were making jokes that cut too deep, normalizing cruelty under the guise of humor. But here, in this moment, Derek was just a man who'd learned the hardest lesson, that loving someone doesn't mean accepting less than you deserve. That kindness isn't weakness. That knowing when to walk away is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. He thought about that night, that gathering, Amanda's words, "I regret marrying him every day." She'd meant it as a joke, as ammunition, as a way to feel superior. She'd meant it as so many things except the truth. But Derek had meant it when he replied. He had regretted it, regretted losing himself, regretted accepting breadcrumbs, regretted staying quiet for so long. The difference was, he'd stopped regretting and started doing. His phone buzzed again. "Natalie, thanks for coffee today. Dinner this weekend? I want to introduce you to my friends. No pressure though." Derek smiled and typed back, "I'd like that. Fair warning, I'm terrible at trivia and I will absolutely embarrass you. Perfect. I'm ridiculously competitive and will absolutely save you. We'll balance out." Balance. What a concept. Derek pocketed his phone and looked out at the city lights, feeling something he'd almost forgotten, anticipation for tomorrow. Not anxiety, not dread, just simple anticipation for what might come next. Behind him, his apartment was quiet but not empty. There were books he wanted to read, projects he wanted to start, a life he wanted to build. Not in reaction to Amanda, not in opposition to anyone, but simply because it was his life and he'd finally claimed it. The joke had stopped being funny years ago. But the punchline, the real punchline, was this: Derek had been the one laughing all along. Quietly, privately, grimly, at the absurdity of staying somewhere he wasn't wanted, with someone who'd made her feelings abundantly clear. He wasn't laughing anymore. He was living. And somewhere across the city, Amanda was learning to live too. Learning that verbal abuse isn't harmless. That jokes told long enough become prophesies. That you can't build intimacy on a foundation of contempt. They'd both learned their lessons. Derek's had just come with a happier ending. He went inside, closed the balcony door, and started planning his weekend. No one to ask permission from. No one to justify his choices to. No one to make him feel small for wanting simple happiness. Just Derek. Finally, beautifully, completely himself. The gathering had ended 6 months ago. The marriage had ended too. But Derek's life? That was just beginning. And this time, the only person who got to write the story was him.